everyone. Well, today we are going to do, yes, another archetype. So, for those of you who like archetypes, here we go. This is one that I can pretty much guarantee most of you watching this right now have. And the reason I say that is because you're part of Coffee with Dawni. And most of the kind of people who are going to be part of Coffee with Dawni are going to have this archetype of the seeker. The seeker is the person who is always looking. They are looking for knowledge, for wisdom. Basically, they want to close the gap between what is and what may be, right? So, seeker archetypes, they want to reach potential in their own life and as a world, right? As a collective on this planet. They most want to see the collective human race reach its potential. The seeker is the person who is always learning and studying and even maybe researching and taking classes. And there is an archetype called the student. And a lot of seekers have student archetype, and a lot of student archetypes also have the seeker archetype. Some of these go together very, very commonly. The seeker is the person who, since they were a small child, has been wondering, asking the questions. They're very curious. Curiosity is one of the main aspects of this archetype. They just want to know, but deeper than they want to know, they want to understand. This can also be part of the archetype of the adventurer. And so adventurer seekers are the ones who are traveling. They're the ones who are out and about, actually immersing themselves into other cultures or esoteric learnings or, different ways of life. Then there is the more introverted seeker, and these are the ones who will usually do research, go to the libraries, read a lot, but they are both seekers. There are just different kinds of seekers. So already, even with what we've covered, how many of you are recognizing yourself in this? Can you see why I said that most of my subscribers will have this archetype? Why else would you want to listen to me yip yap 5 days a week if you weren't curious, if you weren't wanting that knowledge or that epiphany or that way of understanding? If there are some of you that are not recognizing yourself in this archetype, what you may be is the connector. Because of course, that's the other thing I'm all about is like community, connection. And we will get to that archetype eventually. I'm actually very determined to go through all of the most common archetypes. And there are 80 main archetypes, but about 60 of the 80 are fairly common. There are some that you just don't run into as often. Okay, so back to the seeker. Yeah, you know it's you. These are also people who usually love to talk about it. They love to get in a brainstorming session or a really deep conversation with other seekers. So one of the attributes to this archetype that I have noticed is that they almost always crave deep conversations and have everything from a disinterest to maybe a very deep dislike of small talk, of superficial conversation, especially people who have seeker as one of their main 3 archetypes will crave just having, they're like, oh, let's go there. Let's talk about all of it. So if you are a seeker and you are not surrounded by other seekers, you will typically feel very lonely, very disenfranchised. I don't know where I belong. Okay? Now, these are some of my other observations. And it's funny because I constantly reading about archetypes because I'm very interested on other people's takes. As I may have mentioned before, the me talking about archetypes doesn't come from reading a book. Originally, I read about archetypes through Caroline Myss and Jung and some different authors. But where I've really come up with my ideas about these archetypes is through my one-on-one sessions. And I would see, oh my gosh, every single person that I come in contact with who has seeker archetype also hates small talk. Whoa, okay. And then when that happens 500 times, 1,000 times, 2,000 times, because most of the people who come to me for sessions are seekers, right? And just by the way, I do a full archetype session where we get in touch with year 12 archetypes. So hit me up if you want to come see me for one of those. It's like it's a chunky session. They usually take about 2 hours. So yeah, let me know. Let me know if you're wanting to get information about that. But when almost every person who comes to see me is a seeker, and none of them can stand small talk, they're all craving depth. But then I see a couple of the people who come to see me because someone bought them a gift certificate for a session, or just because they're in crisis and they're kind of at the end of their rope, but they're not a seeker. It's a different dynamic. So this is where I get my information from, is from my own experience with my clients. Now, I, of course, have this archetype, and I can think back to being a first grader, a second grader, going into the school library and asking the teacher or the librarian for books specifically on the mysteries of the universe. I wanted to learn about the pyramids. I wanted to study Stonehenge. I wanted to find out about space and the stars and the skies and astronomy and astrology because I'm a seeker, right? So you can kind of start to get it. Now, I will say another aspect, especially of someone who has seeker as their top 3, is that often they will be later in life to settle down, especially the adventure seekers. Will wait to get married, or wait to have kids, or wait to move into a home that they stay in. They'll do it a little later in life because they need to be out and about seeking first. So if this is you, there's nothing wrong with waiting longer, or the fact that you have already waited longer to totally settle down. Now, seekers will sometimes drive other people a little cuckoo who are not seekers, who don't need to know the answers to life, the universe, and everything, 42, or who, those are for my that 42 is for my Douglas Adams people, you know who you are, the rest of you can ignore it, or who want to experience everything. If you have a significant other, if you're a seeker and you have a significant other who is not a seeker, you may have had some breakdowns over this. So let's go into the shadow, always a shadow of the seeker, okay? The shadow of this, the number one shadow of seeker is, I'm just getting you ready for it because some of you are going to have a little, oh, great, inability to commit to a path. These are my scanners. These are my, it's almost like spiritual ADD, where you're going from this concept to this concept to this concept, and maybe you find something that could really work for you, and you put a whole bunch of time and energy and money into it, only to maybe lose interest or get interested in a new modality or a new way of thinking. Anyone? No, not us. Other seekers do that. Obviously not us. Or the seeker shadow can be giving themselves over to a path that they think has all the answers. So we've talked about some of the archetypes that cult leaders have, and one of the main archetypes that cult followers have is seeker, right? Getting really involved in something that they just hope and pray has all the answers because they just want the answers so badly. One of the other shadows of the seeker is like a tortured soul. Like they just feel like they never know enough. They never do enough. They never experience enough. Life's not long enough for them to do and know and be everything that they want. So it's basically a discontent. Now, the reason I'm laughing as I say that is that I do astrological charts. Sometimes I just do them from a place of life purpose theme and from the elements. And I was looking at my own chart recently, and when I'm doing someone's chart, I always look for words that repeat. And the word that repeats, well, two words that repeat all through my chart are restless and discontent. And I have such a restless spirit. You guys, it is one of my greatest challenges in life is how restless I am. And a lot of people who have seeker in their top archetypes are very restless people. And we almost have to learn how to settle down for a minute or learn how to appreciate what we have and not always immediately need the next thing, right? You know, there is no freaking way I'm the only one who's like that out of this group. Okay, let's see if there's another, okay, so another shadow of the seeker goes along with this, which is kind of like a grass is always greener kind of an attitude. This can be difficult. It can create almost a little bit of fickle or flighty or vacillation in what we say we're doing in life. So a lot of seekers will change careers often, even sometimes relationships often, depending on their other archetypes. What we got to remember, you guys, is that these archetypes, they work together like a big soup. That's why it's so fun to know and to really get in touch with what your 12 archetypes are, which is called your arcana, because then you can really figure out how they're working together. So none of these are standalone archetypes, but we all do have a top 3 and a main archetype. So I would say for me, seeker is in like my top 5, but my main archetype is queen. So queen is the archetype that runs the show for me. But this, seeker is probably, I think it's either my 4th or 5th one. And when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, it was probably my number 2. Queen has always been my number 1. I was like 5 years old making people curtsy to me and shit. So, but seeker was probably my number 2 through my teens and 20s. So these will kind of change order too as you go along. So who recognizes yourself in this? I'm really, really curious. I want to know. I want to see which one of you can go, okay, I'm half in the light, I'm half in the shadow. Or right now I'm really in the shadow with this. Or I used to be in the shadow, but now I'm totally in the light. If you do not recognize in yourself both the shadow and the light, at least at some part in your life, so even if you've mastered it, you'll go, oh, but for sure I used to be in the shadow with that, then it's not really one of your main archetypes. For those people who have any of these as one of your main archetypes, you will also recognize the shadow. And it's important to own that because then you know, right? You can be aware of your predisposition to do those things. Oh, I have a predisposition to not be able to fully commit to things over time. So maybe I'm not going to pay 10 grand for that program until I'm really sure that I'm going to stay interested long enough to do that. That type of thing, right? So fascinating to me, as always. Archetypes are one of my favorite things in the world. Hopefully interesting to you guys. And I've got lots of good ones coming up. May your coffee be strong and your life be blessed. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like and subscribe. It really helps out my channel. And if you would be interested in working with me further, you can check out DawniAngel.com. I would love to come speak to your group, come to your business to do a training, be on your podcast, my personal favorite, or even work with you one-on-one.